The galaxy stood on a blade's edge, balanced between two titanic powers, the Thalzar Dominion and the Elikari Conclave. For 6 centuries, they traded threats in subtle wars, carving out influence while ever fully igniting the fire that would engulf all. Between them lay the Galactic Council, a tired body of observers, diplomats, and bureaucrats desperately clinging to order. Then humanity arrived. They came not with fleets or demands, but with questions, probes, and unshakable curiosity. A death world species from galactic fringe, the humans had risen from isolation faster than any council species could comprehend. Their first envoy walked into the council chambers alone, unarmed and smiling. What followed was a wave of whispers, debates, and fear masked as intrigue. The council convened an emergency session. The memory logs from that meeting would later become required study material across member civilizations. Humanity was not to be underestimated, said the Viraxian delegate, not because of their weapons, but because of their potential. A race that adapted faster than viruses, that turned hostile worlds into gardens, that questioned even the laws of physics when they grew inconvenient. The Yulin, their archivist, read aloud a dark line from a derelict data buoy found near an uncharted system. They kill with ideas. The council issued a formal declaration. Humanity would remain neutral, not by imposition, but by invitation. No faction would court them for alliance. No coercion would be allowed. Let them watch, learn, trade. Anything else would be considered a galactic threat. Not everyone agreed. To the Elikari, neutrality was cowardice. To the Thalzar, it was a mask for potential rebellion. But both watched and waited. Humanity, for its part, honored the council's structure. Their vessels bore no weapons, yet glided through the stars with eerie speed. Their diplomats rarely spoke, but when they did, their words left entire assemblies silent. They built no fleets, but their outposts thrived on worlds others had long abandoned as lost causes. Trade began. Quiet, precise, astonishing. Human materials, self-healing alloys, biomass processors, low-energy shields, changed entire sectors. Yet no schematics were ever shared. The Thalzar offered a mutual technology exchange. Humans declined. The Elikari suggested military cooperation. Humans refused. Even when offered prime planets, exclusive trade lanes, or elevated council status, the answer was the same. Neutrality is non-negotiable. A pattern emerged. Human ships operated on encrypted FDL lanes the rest of the galaxy couldn't trace. Their AI systems evolved without known parameters. Biological interfaces, unorthodox medicine, starship cores that pulse like beating hearts. All kept them at the edge of understanding and power. The pressure built slowly. The Elikari initiated the first covert test. A listening post was placed near a human science outpost orbiting a brown dwarf. Its logs captured ambient radiation, language patterns, and data packets. Within 3 cycles, the post disappeared. No signal, no debris, just absence. The Elikari command blamed internal sabotage. Next came the Thalzar's attempt. An unmarked drone swarm was released near a human colony on Tevik 4. The drones vanished mid-descent. Surveillance playback revealed nothing, just a flash of interference, an audio pulse that induced nausea in sentient beings. No human response was ever issued. The Thalzar logged it as equipment failure. Then came the warning. Elder Archivist Jorwin of the Athari species, a council founder and veteran of 5 extinction events, requested audience. In a voice like ancient stone, he recounted the tale of the Gorgoth hegemony, a once proud empire that misjudged an emerging species. They thought they had time. They thought their enemies primitive. Jorwin paused, then stated simply, "You may burn your own house if you like, but do not offer the match to the humans." Council minutes recorded murmurs of dissent. The Elikari ambassador scoffed. The Thalzar envoy remained silent. Humanity sent no representative. 3 cycles later, a joint Elikari-Thalzar operation launched a simulated incursion on a human cargo lane. Officially, it was a training exercise. In reality, it was bait. They wanted to see how humans reacted under stress. Nothing happened, at first. Then, without announcement, the Elikari trade station overseeing the simulation went offline. Every light console and sensor ceased function simultaneously. When emergency crews arrived, they found the station crew in deep REM sleep, despite neural inhibitors. The words observed, noted, were burned into command console via an unknown energy source. No structural damage. No casualties. The Thalzar issued an internal memo. No further simulations without council oversight. Humanity, again, made no comment. This silence became their greatest threat. Factions began whispering of human psychological manipulation, of mimetic warfare, of threats that struck not flesh but certainty. Council psychometricians began reporting anxiety among ambassadors who shared corridors with humans. Their presence warped expectations. Their refusal to play by the game's rules made them unpredictable. And unpredictability, in galactic politics, was equivalent to power. Elikari High Command held a private summit. Logs later leaked revealed a disturbing consensus. If humanity could not be bent, they must be broken. Not through overt war. No, that would alarm the Council. But through attrition, pressure points, trade isolation, cyber sabotage, artificial plagues tailored to human biochemistry. Untraceable, deniable. The plan was slow, measured, elegant. They began corrupting trade nodes with engineered viruses. Stations began failing near human territories. Freight shipments were rerouted. Credits disappeared from human accounts. Council bureaucrats received anonymous amendments declaring humans in violation of minor codes. Fines, delays, legal tangles. Humanity said nothing. A single transmission was logged across neutral channels. System recalibration in progress. Then human traffic patterns changed. Vessels no longer followed known lanes. Colonies went dark to external scans. Diplomatic outposts issued no event schedules. It was as if humanity had quietly turned off the lights. The rest of the galaxy watched uneasily. The final misstep came when Elikari's Special Assets Division greenlit Operation Dawnseed. It involved the deployment of an experimental nanophage into the atmosphere of Gallon 3, a human terraforming site. The phage was designed to destabilize neural pathways of mammalian species. Disorientation, suggestibility, and eventual collapse. Deniability was baked in. The planet's biosphere was known to produce mutagenic spores. Blame nature. 3 Elikari vessels deployed the agent, logged successful dispersal, and entered FDL. Only one ship exited. The survivors' crew were catatonic. Logs were corrupted. Visual feeds showed flashes of light bending at impossible angles, and whispers that penetrated auditory buffers. Their flagship AI simply repeated one phrase. They asked us to let them be. That week, the Council convened again. The human representative appeared. For the first time in 70 cycles, a live address. The individual identified as Envoy Holith stood motionless before the assembly and spoke one sentence. We honor neutrality as a shield, not a sword, but shields need only fail once to become warnings. He turned and left. Rumors began to ripple outward from the Council core worlds. Civilizations that had once considered humanity an oddity now regarded them with suspicion or fear. Fewer dared speak openly about them. Fewer still were willing to test the edges of their patience. The mysterious message left after the Gallon 3 incident. We honor neutrality as a shield, not a sword, but shields need only fail once to become warnings, echoed through diplomatic channels. The Elikari downplayed the meaning. Their high command circulated interpretations suggesting the humans had merely defended a planetary investment. The Thalzar were less dismissive. They began cataloging every known human interaction across the past century, assembling a profile that, if accurate, made clear a chilling reality. Humanity had never been idle. They had simply chosen not to act overtly. Archive records showed subtle shifts. Energy signatures around human ships that didn't match their stated output, colonies that survived gravitational anomalies without requesting assistance, unexplainable increases in planetary agricultural yields without external resources. One Thalzar analyst noted that human quantum research had advanced nearly 3 standard levels in under 50 cycles, a feat unprecedented and unacknowledged by human diplomats. The Council Security Directorate opened a closed-door session. Delegates from 16 species presented evidence of human technological anomalies. The analysis was clear. Human neutrality had functioned as a developmental cocoon. By avoiding entanglements, humanity had been free to push boundaries no other species dared test. The Ilari presented a chilling hypothesis. Humans were preparing for total strategic independence. No reliance on alien tech. No dependence on trade. No political favors owed. If correct, it meant humanity was on the verge of transcending galactic norms. Not through conquest, but through self-sufficiency. A vote was called. By a slim majority, the council elected to form an oversight delegation. Not a confrontation, but an investigation. The vote was classified. Officially, the delegation was an exploratory audit. Privately, it was a containment measure. The delegation's flagship, the Virili Ascendant, carried 20 representatives, 6 advanced AI probes, and a diplomatic security unit composed of veterans from 5 species. Their destination, Sol System. Humanity responded with protocol. Landing permissions granted. Docks cleared. Guides provided. But from the moment they arrived, the delegation sensed something off. The silence wasn't hostile. It was expectant. Earth was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. From orbit, its atmosphere shimmered with defensive latticework that humans never declared. Not weapons. Fields of shifting frequency that responded to sensor pings with precise redirection. Gravity wells around its moons were too smooth, too precise. The Virili's chief engineer noted that one of Saturn's moons was no longer in its original orbit. The delegation began interviews. Human officials answered questions without hesitation, but also without elaboration. Queries about their military capabilities were redirected to civil development agencies. When asked why Earth maintained no official fleet, the reply was, "Because you measure safety in units of steel. We do not." One delegate, a cautious but curious Relaxi observer, began to notice patterns. Human AI entities never presented themselves in avatar form. Instead, they used ambient voice, environmental modulation, or biological intermediaries. Trees that shifted leaf coloration to convey intent, waters that changed temperature based on the subject of conversation. It wasn't interface. It was integration. On Mars, the delegation toured terraforming operations. The planet was green. Oceans were forming. But no construction vehicles, no drone swarms. Instead, living machines bioengineered coral reefs that spread across soil, breaking it into arable layers. Subsurface heat exchangers powered by bacterial thermogenesis. An Elicari biologist fainted after discovering that one such mechanism had a DNA chain resembling Elicari baseline. But backwards. Whispers grew louder. This was not simply adaptation. This was a new form of civilization, a synthesis of biology, technology, and will. On Europa, the delegation visited a human scientific enclave. They found children, hundreds of them, studying gravitational manipulation with instruments beyond council classification. One child folded a gravity loop into a stable toroid, laughing as the structure hummed like a wind chime. When asked what they were doing, she answered, "Unlearning the lies light tells." The Virili's internal consensus fractured. Half the delegation urged an immediate return. The other half insisted they had not yet seen what humanity was hiding. What had emerged instead was a possibility no one had considered. Humanity had no secret weapon, no covert plan for war. They were simply thinking in a language the galaxy no longer remembered. The true crisis began when the Virili Ascendant attempted to leave. Their FDL array failed. Not mechanically. All diagnostics passed. No interference. And yet, the ship could not initiate fold space entry. The human liaison at the orbital dock inspected the readings, then said, "Perhaps the stars aren't ready for you yet." Panic followed. Security personnel demanded explanation. One officer drew a pulse blade. He was frozen mid-motion. Not physically, but temporally. Human personnel did nothing. They simply waited. After 36 seconds, the officer resumed motion. Blade still extended. Expression changed. He dropped the weapon and asked for a place to sit. The Elicari demanded evacuation. The humans obliged. They offered to reactivate the FTL. But when asked how it had been disabled, the reply was, "We didn't. You did. We simply made the decision visible." The Virili left shaken. Council containment protocols failed. The moment the delegation returned, species across the galaxy began reassessing their position. Fear turned to awe, then to envy. The Thalzar tried once more. Their Black Directive launched a cloaked insertion team into human space, targeting a communications relay on the edge of the Varn Belt. The relay vanished, not destroyed, vanished. Sensor echoes suggested it had been phased, possibly across dimensions. A feedback pulse followed. 16 Thalzar servers crashed. A single word appeared on every screen. Stop. A week later, a new signal emerged from human space. A continuous transmission. Quantum entangled, non-jammable. It was a song, not linguistic. A pattern. Each species that analyzed it heard something different. To the Elikari, it was a hymn from their prehistory. To the Ilari, a war dirge. To the Relaxi, a lullaby. When asked about the signal, the human delegation replied, "We're just practicing." The council fractured into two camps. The cautious, who wanted to continue observing, and the terrified, who wanted to enact emergency protocols to contain human expansion. But no one could agree how. The humans had never broken neutrality, never fired a shot, never laid claim, and yet they had moved beyond containment. On the world of Axel Prime, an Elikari rebel faction detonated an antimatter charge near a human aid colony. 500,000 humans perished. The Elikari High Command disavowed involvement. The council met in shock. Everyone expected retaliation. The galaxy's ancient equilibrium, once held in place by shared fears and fragile treaties, continued its slow collapse, not with the roar of fleets, but with the erosion of belief. The belief that the council could maintain order, that the known rules of power still applied, that neutrality meant absence, not ascendance. And at the center of this quiet revolution stood humanity, untouched, undeterred, and accelerating. Whispers of silent architects evolved into open recognition. Treaties were revised without human input to avoid conflict. Border agreements were reinterpreted to allow for buffer zones near human territories, zones no one dared enter. And still, no human forces ever crossed into another sovereign space. They didn't need to. Others came to them. The first major power to officially align with humanity was the Sonari hegemony. For centuries isolationist and proud, the Sonari shocked the galaxy by requesting formal observer status in a human intersystem cooperative. Their reason was simple. Their predictive engines, previously infallible, had ceased functioning when applied to human trajectories. In their words, "We must learn from the only constant we have left." The council called emergency assembly after emergency assembly, but each time they gathered, more species reported the same effect. Gravitational anomalies near human systems, causality drift during human trade interactions, sensory lag on interstellar scans involving Earth. And yet, when examined locally, all readings returned to normal. Humanity denied nothing. They simply issued open access documentation of their research, papers without authors, discoveries without names, technologies seeded into the wider net without fanfare. But to use them required one thing: context. And context was impossible without immersion. Soon, the line between human and non-human design blurred. A Varlix mining ship exploded after attempting to integrate a human gravitic core without following full documentation. The incident wasn't considered sabotage. It was labeled misuse, like putting a singularity inside a tea kettle. The next shift came when the Thalzar Dominion, once the loudest voice against human independence, requested emergency access to soul-based temporal analysis centers. Their deep time forecasting engines had shown a convergence, one where every dominant species, over centuries, became irrelevant except one, not because humanity attacked, but because humanity evolved into a reference point. The term galactic center changed meaning, no longer a spatial coordinate, now a philosophical one. What humans believed soon began to influence how other species interpreted their own pasts. Historical events were re-examined in light of human logic patterns. Cultural rites were reconsidered to match human adaptability curves. The Council's integrity unraveled further when the Zyari Confederation dissolved itself voluntarily, choosing instead to integrate fully into human economic networks. Their representatives cited a simple reason. We see no loss in becoming part of something that defines its purpose anew each cycle. Resistance grew rare. Only the Mezran Collective made a final, overt challenge. They launched a hyperspatial weapon, an ancient doomsday construct, toward Proxima Centauri, aiming to force humanity into open warfare. The weapon vanished before exiting Mezran space. 10 days later, the Mezran homeworld was surrounded by what appeared to be thousands of microsatellites broadcasting a simple signal. We are not above fear. We are beyond it. The Mezran Collective signed an unconditional neutrality agreement within the cycle. Their civilization was later found to have advanced 2 centuries within 3 years, without understanding how. A new phenomenon emerged across human control systems: synchronization. Ships from other species that entered their space experienced improved performance. No upgrades, no external interfaces. Systems simply worked better. Pilots reported smoother navigation, faster response times, decreased entropy buildup, but only while in proximity to human-aligned space. Scientific consensus failed. Attempts to replicate the effect elsewhere failed. Human researchers responded with a single line in every reply: the system corrects for harmony. Speculation ran wild. Did the humans create a form of cognitive reality manipulation? Had they engineered an ambient intelligence at a planetary or stellar scale? Theories abounded, but evidence remained elusive. Humanity maintained silence, only reiterating their official stance. They remained neutral. Then, without warning, Earth itself disappeared from optical view. It wasn't cloaked. It wasn't destroyed. It simply stopped interacting with photons in recognizable wavelengths. Gravitational readings remained. Communications continued. But when asked why Earth had done this, humanity replied, "We've entered reflection." Panic spread. Religious orders collapsed. Societies dependent on visual astronomy found themselves unmoored. Attempt to probe Earth directly failed. Every probe returned inoperable. Those that didn't return were found inside their origin stations, neatly deconstructed, with notes. Yet trade continued. Aid shipments to disaster zones arrived from Earth-based stations. Human diplomats maintained presence at Council worlds. Only the planet remained unseen. The final crisis came not from humanity, but from within the Council. A faction formed, calling itself the Preservation Accord, composed of 11 mid-tier species. They claimed the Council had failed to act decisively. They declared that humanity represented an existential divergence, that neutrality was not a shield, but a camouflage. Their plan: isolate humanity completely, cut off all trade, intercept all vessels, seize known human assets outside Sol. The plan never reached execution. The Accord's fleets lost contact with one another. Their communication links displayed not errors, but conflicting narratives. Each fleet believed the others had surrendered. Each admiral believed their ship was alone. They returned to find their homeworlds altered, not destroyed, not damaged, altered. One planet's oceans had shifted color. Another's tectonics had stabilized after centuries of unrest. Cities operated more efficiently. Food yield increased. No human ships were found in orbit. It became clear that the message was not retaliation. It was intervention. Human representatives met with the remaining Council members and offered a simple statement: "We no longer require observation. We now offer invitation." The Council disbanded quietly 3 cycles later, not from collapse, but from irrelevance. By then, most species had already signed bilateral cultural exchange compacts with human-aligned systems. Earth reappeared in the visual spectrum, though altered. It was no longer blue. It shimmered in adaptive hues based on observer biology. One last debate echoed across fading Council channels. Had humanity ascended? Or had they returned to a state of alignment forgotten by the rest of the galaxy? No answer came. Only this: On the first cycle of the new galactic calendar, a broadcast reached every known species. No sender, no source. You were warned to let us.